So when we talk about money, it's about volume, but the world's been taught rates. And what we say is that you got to have access to cash. And so the infinite banking concept is really the process of recognizing that our cash has a cost. We always are dealing in finance money. And that blows the mind off of most people who are cash payers, because they're like, wait a second, no, I pay cash for everything. I don't finance anything. But yet, if I showed you a financial calculation of your money growing from today for the rest of your life, and you stopping the compounding on whatever dollar it is that you use, you see it immediately on the calculation of how little money you have in the future.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yona Weiss. It is so great that you have joined this show today, because we have very special guests. We got Joey, Mure, and Russ Morgan coming to us from Alabama.
Yeah,
sweet home.
Sweet home, Alabama. Wealth Without Wall Street. These guys are making amazing things happen, teaching people about financial independence, incredible community that they have created, including a top-rated podcast. So check out the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, where they talk about all kinds of stuff from tax, legal, investing, infinity banking, you name it, anything really within the financial sector, helping people create better lives for themselves and their futures. What's up, guys? How you guys doing today?
Man, we're doing fantastic. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah, it's good to connect again. I know we had you on our show not too long ago, and it was a great conversation, and glad to be back talking with you, man.
Well, it's my pleasure. You guys are awesome, and I enjoy the conversations. And it's fascinating, listening to your podcast as well, because I came across it, and we got connected, and I'm fascinated by a number of things. And so maybe you can walk me through what it was, even before we get there, what it was that inspired you guys to start this.
Well, I think it's all kind of a part of my story, so I'll try to keep the bio a little short. But I was in the mortgage business for 11 years. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a super high commission job.
Mm-hmm.
There's no salaries, anything like this. And so I was constantly trying to solve the money game. One, having some consistency, being able to put money away, but have access to it, because ultimately I never knew if this was my best quarter and the next quarter was going to be a blunder. You just never know.
Absolutely. And
met Russ along the way. We became friends first. And he said, you know what? At one point he said, I'm going to start sending you referrals from my clients. He said, but first you have to read this book. He's like, by the way, it's $20. And I'm like, okay, I'll read the book, but I mean, it's a little low budget, man. Like, you could have at least given me the book. Like,
come on, Yona. There's no way.
You're not too successful if you're making me pay for this thing.
Yona, if you knew Joey really well, you'd know this dude's so cheap that if he turns loose at $20, I knew that he was going to actually read the book. So then when he was talking to my clients, he would be educated when they were coming to him, asking him like more probably off the wall questions as it relates to mortgage than his probably traditional client would come to him.
Well, it's totally true, by the way. What he says is true. And I'm glad he did, because I did read the book, and it was exactly what I had been looking for, but I never knew existed. Mm. It was a difference from the traditional, just put money in your 401k blindly, just hope for the best, keep staying in the market, all the lies that were fed in the financial world that never really sat well with me, but never knew that anything else existed. So I immediately started implementing these things myself. And over the course of 4 years, I grew immensely. Just working with Russ, going to different seminars and things like that with him. And I sat with him at 4 years in, and I just got really convicted. I was like, man, why don't more people do this? Like, why don't other people know that this exists? And it was kind of like the Lord just kind of put his thumb in my back. And he's like, well, why don't you teach them? Why aren't you the guy out there telling them about this? You're so passionate about this. And I was like, well, because, this is me just hypothetically talking back to God at that point. I'm like, God, I'm making well over $300,000 a year. I'm really good at my job. I, have a great lifestyle, whatever. And that's why I don't want to do this full time, because I have to give up all that. But anyways, it was compelling enough. I went home, talked to my wife. She was pregnant with my fourth daughter at the time. We have 5 girls, but at the time was his fourth daughter. And I was like, hey, I feel like the Lord's telling me I need to just quit my job and go do this full time with Russ. And I kind of, hesitated, and I kind of shrunk back, like waiting for her to be like, you moron, what are you thinking? And instead she said, you absolutely should do that. And I was blown away. I was like, this makes all the sense in the world. I need to start pursuing this. And so anyways, all that basically led to Russ and I saying, this does need to get out. We need to create a place where people can learn this at scale. And that was in 2014 that we started on that journey together.
Awesome. And Russ, you've been in this business of wealth advising and financial advising for quite a while before that. I mean, obviously that was the context in which Joey was talking about that he met you, and you wanted to refer business to you.
Yeah, true. Like I got in the financial world in 2004. I became a certified financial planner in 2008. As you know, what happened in the financial markets in 2008, 2009, all the wisdom I thought I had recently acquired was, worthless, right? It was rubbish. And so I was in a situation where I went to a conference in 2009. I learned this concept called becoming your own banker, an infinite banking concept. You mentioned that kind of in the intro. That was the book I introduced to Joey. Mm-hmm. And it was really more about like what I had been in a position of helping. I thought I was helping my clients was really separating them from money. And what we have found over time is that the reason people are not financially successful is because they're not educated in what they're doing with their money. Right. They blindly give it away in hopes that it's going to come back. They work till they're, 60, 70 years old, thinking that's going to be when I'm going to, ride off into the sunset. And they get there and they look, oh, wow, my $450,000 401k balance is not going to be enough. That's not going to, going to last me, 100 years after that. Mm-hmm. But also it's just people don't have access to cash. And the thing that has stuck out to me since reading that book in 2009 is that the financial golden rule is those who have the money make the rules. And most people don't have the money. They've given it away to someone else. So the rules have been dictated to them. Mm-hmm. And so we, Wealth Without Wall Street kind of was birthed out of that concept of let's help people have control. Let's let them give them reins of their financial life and let their creativity and their future be theirs and not based upon hope, not based upon some 59.5 number or whatever it is. It's based upon how can I create more cash flow than passive income than monthly expenses. And we've just been trying to open those doors and connect those dots for people for a while now.
Yeah. And, just going back to something that Joey said before, when you guys connected on that level where it was like you saw, to you it was divine providence, really. It was kind of inspiration. It's showing you, here's an opportunity that came my way to actually make a difference in other people's lives, not only in my life, but in other people's lives as well. And I think that you can see very clearly. I mean, not everyone sees that, but when you're given that gift to be able, it really is, it's a gift to be able to see that. And it's kind of cliche to call, the present. That's why the present is called the gift, right? The past, the future. But no, it's true. Because when you're really present in cognizant of what's happening in your life and signs, where you have an opportunity and just, this is clearly what I need to be doing right now in life. It is a gift because not a lot of people have that. And so now that you're able to do that for other people to kind of open those, windows of opportunity, I'm sure you guys see this day in and day out with clients and people coming to you. But to me, that's just, it's mind blowing. And it's really, that's why I do what I do. I mean, the truth of the matter is I love giving. I love helping people, and to see people have that financial freedom, have more cash flow, have more opportunities come their way. There's nothing better than that.
Well, it is one of those things where a lot of times we have our clients who become our coaches. I've seen that happen over and over and over again, is that people get so passionate about applying this in their own life that they start teaching. We have one of our coaches is a pilot, and he's like, man, I've been flying for 20 years and I love what I do. It was, I was helping people, but nothing like what I'm doing right now. And when we get off a podcast a second ago with one of our clients that's in our community, he's like, man, I was just working a job, being the best dad I could possibly be for my wife, my kids. But I realized that I was not there for them. I wasn't able to spend the time with them that I wanted to. And I want to give them things that I didn't have when I was growing up. Not that I didn't I live without, but I just didn't have the extras.
Mhm.
And when somebody sees the world from a different viewpoint and says, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. Like when I can create income streams over and above what I can go to work for, that opens doors, it opens windows, that allows us to see the world, it allows us to maybe experience things that otherwise we wouldn't have. And I think that's really cool. And those are those just constant reminders that we have in our community. And everybody's always talking about these things. And I think that's what motivates everybody to grow. And a lot of times that's what's keeping people stuck where they are, because they're not surrounded by other people.
That's right.
We say, what's the old saying, that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Right.
And if the people that you're spending the most time with are doing exactly the same thing you are, it makes sense, right?
Mhm.
So you've got to be challenging yourself to expand your network and get into a position where you're seeking things that other people have already done, and,
Right.
and you're learning and gaining wisdom from them.
Well, and Yona, I want to add to one of the main things that we really get a lot of joy out of is seeing the impact that this has on people's lives. Like we can talk about the stories of people within our community. They all have their own clarity moment, which is where we start our whole process is clarity. It's like, for instance, the guy we talked to this morning is like, man, our time freedom is so important as a family. That's why we're on this journey. That's why we started it. That's why we're motivated, and not to have to give up until we're 65 or 70 to have some sort of freedom. He's like, we can do it. He's got a 10-year goal to get $25,000 a month of passive income. He's like, I don't even really need that much, but that's our goal. And that would give us the freedom to be able to travel more. He's got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and he's thinking, man, I want to be there for every one of their practices and their games and their tournaments and the things that they're going to be into. For me, it's, man, how can we have the most impact in this world if we're constantly strapped down with financial pressures? Like that is the thing that is stealing your opportunity and your potential every single day. And it's like we've just put up with it. And what Wealth Without Wall Street is saying is we're saying enough. Like, don't keep putting up with this. You have another option and you have to take control. You can't just give your money over to a money babysitter and hope. That's not a strategy. And it's going to keep you enslaved and in this bondage. Like you got to break those old ways of thinking. And so I'd say, 90% of the job that we have is challenging the status quo and changing the way that you think. But once you can do that, you get clarity. Now all the things start to make sense that maybe were, gray before then.
Right. Absolutely. And you guys do this through, obviously you have a advisory program and you have a lot of content out there. You're creating the podcast, obviously, but something unique that you guys have, I mean, not entirely unique, but pretty unique, is that you have this community that you're talking about, which is, maybe you could discuss what that is, how you built that. And it's like an online forum, but it's also a lot of interactive opportunities. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yes, we have a company that builds out the infinite banking process for people, which is using dividend paying life insurance policies, not for the death benefit, but for cash. So like we set up high cash value life insurance, just like the bank. So Joey worked at Wells Fargo Bank. They have $18 billion in cash value. So like we're setting up systems just like that to hand people's cash or run people's cash through as they go buy real estate and businesses and other lending deals and stuff like that. On the other end, we have an information company, and our information company has this community built into it. So we are trying to draw people into this process of, okay, yes, I want financial freedom today. I don't want to defer it. I don't want to defer time. I don't want to defer the joys of spending time with my kids, all the travel, taxes, anything. Like we want access. So we've built a community, and within it, we have courses, we have groups, we have people that are taking action at every step of the way. So some people are just now getting started. Like they're like, I just heard Wealth Without Wall Street on this podcast. I'm coming in. I need to know where to start. We have people that are, super successful. They already have, tens of thousands of dollars of passive income, but they're looking to figure out how to enhance that, maybe through tax strategies, maybe through some of these infinite banking concepts that can help them get to the next level that they're going to. And the whole community is built around a platform that's not on the social networks. Not that those are bad, but just like for me right now, I'm in Lent. and I'm not participating on social networks. Right? So, for some people, like that would be that in their financial game. If all their financial study groups were on Facebook, for instance, I wouldn't be participating. So we intentionally built that to avoid that, but also to, you don't get distracted by the cat memes or what your neighbor's doing, or what political issue do I want to go on a rant on today? Like, we keep all of that off of it, and we're 100% focused on becoming financially free. And so everybody joins this group with that mindset, and it's just people coming to give. And there's access to lots of tools in there. But I think the biggest part is, if you don't already have a framework, you don't already have a network of people that are thinking necessarily the way you are, you have the ability. And we have people all over the world, Yona, that are participating in this. And the app gives people the same functionality they would probably have on most other social networks, like direct messaging. They also can kind of see where people are. So it has kind of a locational system to it. So you could see, I'm in Israel. Like, you can see, are there other people in Israel that could do that? Or I'm in the West Coast or East Coast or wherever in the world, and you can see who other are on that platform. So we have about 4,000 people right now, and it's been cool to see. That's kind of our little brainchild for the last 18 months, just growing it and seeing it, just the adoption of people like having success and sharing those stories and asking questions, because it is kind of an open forum where people can ask questions and get answers, not only from some of our coaches, but also just from people in the community doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's really smart. I mean, everyone is on social media in one form or another. And when you're putting your energy into something like that, but it's not with the best use of time or the best use of energy, and you're not educating yourself. I mean, like you said, you're surrounding yourself with people, even, maybe virtually, but you're still surrounding yourself because the intake, the conversations that you're having with the people that you want to be like, right? The like-minded people, that is an opportunity that is not really out there. I mean, yes, you can be on Facebook or you can be on LinkedIn or whatever it is, and still follow and be involved in conversations that are surrounding those topics and those ideas, but you don't have the community setting, like you said, where it's really more people that are either in the same place where you're at or where you want to get to. And I think that it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that it's also a place that we've curated all the content that would take somebody from, hey, I've never even looked into anything that's passive income, to financial freedom, like all the steps along the way. And you got the a la carte type items, like, hey, maybe I just want to learn how to optimize my debt. So I buy this debt, paying down debt like a boss course. I like to say that because it's just really cool how it comes out. Or maybe I just want to take, like, we have an analysis that people can take called the Investor DNA. It just tells you your personality as an investor, because maybe you've just never gotten into the first investment and you're like, what do I need to know about myself before I engage with this passive income idea or this side hustle or whatever else it is that I'm going after. So we have those options that are kind of just pick them as you go, or you can even join like a group coaching program that you go through with other people. It kind of provides accountability. And so anyways, we've got it covered from nuts to bolts there for people to be engaged.
Awesome. Now, something you guys are, very heavily involved with, and Russ mentioned the infinity banking concept. And this is something that we haven't really talked about on this podcast. It's not something necessarily we have gone into really any subject matter for that matter to too great length, but I think it's an important concept that I would love, since you guys are involved in it, really understand it. If you give us like the Reader's Digest version of what that is and who is it for, more importantly, because I think there's a lot of misconception surrounding it. And so please clear.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I would start off, and I said it a second ago, but really the reason most people aren't financially free is they don't have access to cash. They just don't. I mean, we meet people all the time. We were interviewing a guy and he's saying, hey, I was wanting to do my first real estate deal and I was super excited. And so I thought I could go to my 401k and take a loan against it to go buy the property. And I just switched from one company to the next. The previous company would allow you to take loans. The new company won't. And he's like, I literally missed out on the deal. I had it all set up. I couldn't buy the property. I couldn't come up with the down payment because I didn't have access to cash. And he said, it set me back 2 years. And I said, well, what if you could have had access to cash? You could have bought that property. What do you think that would have have done to your timeline to getting financially free? He goes, oh, it would have accelerated it tenfold because I know the way I am is when I bought the first one, I would have bought the second one within a couple of months. I would have bought the third, would have bought the fourth. And, one of our financial mentors used to talk about volume and rate. And he's like, think about a shot, right? Right now, the whole world's thinking about shots. It's not the volume of what's going in your arm or not the rate at which they push it in. It's the volume, right? Too little probably doesn't do anything. Too much probably could kill you, right? So when we talk about money, it's about volume, but the world's been taught rates. And what we say is that you got to have access to cash. And so the infinite banking concept is really the process of recognizing that our cash has a cost. We always are dealing in finance money. And that blows the mind off of most people who are cash payers because they're like, wait a second. No, I pay cash for everything. I don't finance anything. But yet, if I showed you a financial calculation of your money growing from today for the rest of your life and you stopping the compounding on whatever dollar it is that you use, you see it immediately on the calculation of how little money you have in the future. We did this example for a group yesterday. We teach people in our community. We have a STR mastermind, a short-term rental mastermind group. And Joey and I personally have 19 units. And we were like teaching on this concept. And we said, our businesses is producing around 50% returns, but let's just use a 20% example. If you started with $25,000 and you were earning 20% in your business for the next 25 years, it grows to over $2 million if you were just accumulating, right? Just for simple, I'm working in this utopia thing. Well, a world of illustration. Right. Well, if in year 5, you said, you know what, I've been doing good with my business. I want to reward myself. I'm going to go buy a car. I'm not going to buy an expensive car. I'm going to buy a used car, 20 grand. You take 20 grand in year 5 out of that model. You know how much money you end up with? 1.1. It was a $900,000 difference by taking 20 grand out of that equation. And that's what people are constantly doing every time they spend cash. And so the author of this book called Becoming Your Own Banker recognized that our money has a cost and you have to play for that. So we're always dealing with borrowed money. So all he said is that, look, if you're going to put your money in cash, some people are going to put their money in investments. Some people are going to put their money in real estate. It's all going to have to flow through someone's institution. Who's going to make money from that? And so he said, why not use an instrument that you are the owner of, that you can deposit on and you can take loans against? So it forms the function of a bank. That's all a bank has, is depositors and borrowers, right? And so it's using dividend-paying life insurance, which is the oldest financial instrument that we know of. That goes back hundreds of years. It's nothing like super sexy because it doesn't earn but 3 to 5%. But what it does, it earns 3 to 5% when our cash earns 0. It earns 3 to 5% regardless if we borrow against it. It constantly grows. And so for real estate investors, they love this. When they get their hands on this, they're like, wait a second. You mean I can put cash in here? I can borrow against that cash to go do my real estate deal. I don't have structured paybacks because I am the bank. I get to make the decisions of when I pay it back. So if I'm doing flips or if I'm doing, wholesale deals, whatever it may be, I can put it back as the cash comes back to me. But then as I put it back in there, I've got readily access cash to do it again. And I don't have to fill out all the paperwork at the bank. Like I don't have 3,000, forms to look over and sign all of the stuff. So that, for most people, they're seeing infinite banking in the light of it's just another place to store my cash. And what I always tell Joey, and I go back to my initial analogy about volume versus rate, is that there's probably investors that you've talked to that have 1 property. You've probably talked to people who have 10 properties. You probably have talked to people who have 100 properties, maybe 1,000 properties. Now let's assume they all produce the same rate of return, 10%. I'm just making up a number. But the volume is different for each one of those, right? We would all say we'd rather have the person who had 1,000 properties at 10% instead of the one who had 10 properties at 10%. Well, what's the difference between those? Well, it was access to cash in order to make those deals happen. And so our audience, the people that we're working with, are wanting more access to cash so they can do the deals. Right.
That's a great explanation. I think probably one of the best I've ever heard, if not the best of the concept. But can you touch on the fact, and I've heard different things from different people, is there an ideal person who this is for, or is this for anyone? I mean, is there a starting point? Like if I got $10,000 in the bank, and I just want to get access to that, can I open this? Or is it someone who has $5 million and they want to do it? Is there some middle ground, or who's this for?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say I just borrow the information from Nelson Nash, who's the author of that book, Becoming Your Own Banker. again, that kind of changed my whole life. But basically, what he would say is there's a lot of human elements to this. Like finance is not just black and white. If you think it's non-emotional, if you think it's not, gray in some areas, you're wrong. And one of those key aspects is, who am I? Right. What am I prone to do? And he talks about, like, if you're going to spend every dollar that you make because you're suffering from Parkinson's law, that means like when income increases, expenses rise to equal it. Then this isn't for you, because ultimately this only works if you have a surplus, right? And so, for instance, if you don't have a surplus, if there's more month than there is money, this isn't going to work for you. And by the way, neither is any other financial strategy. Right. It just doesn't work. So you have to live below your means. I think that's a key factor.
Absolutely.
But anybody that has a surplus that is consistently utilizing that surplus to either pay off debt or to then work towards building assets that create passive income, they can use this process. And again, it's less about like qualifying for a product as it is more thinking about the process of utilizing your cash for growing wealth outside of that.
And let me throw some like an actual situation to that. So,
sure.
and everybody comes into this differently, right? So I'm just going to think of one person that's in our community and how, what it is that they were looking for and how they apply that. So this person's goal was to actually build up some cash so they could buy some real estate properties, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were looking at, just like Joey said, look, at the end of every month, once I take in account that I'm not going to do certain things. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to go to the movies. I'm not going to go on vacations. Not that crap. I'm talking like things that, like, I'm not going to pay excess taxes. I'm not going to give the money into this 401k ever again that I can't get back until I'm 59 and a half. I'm going to understand how paying off my debt actually either gets me closer to financial freedom or gets me away from it. And we go through that. We help them understand it. Once they do that, usually they got to a point, that they have cash. Right. I'm just going to give this person an example. They end up with, after doing that, $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Now, for some people, that's like, really, that's all the cash you got left over at the end of the month? For some people, like, man, I wish I had $2,000.
Right.
So this is, just a black and white example. So they started putting $2,000 a month away into their insurance policy. And they built that up. So over 6 months, they were able to build up some cash in there. And so they were able to use that cash to be able to do their first real estate deal. They took a loan against that cash value, went and bought a property, and started taking the cash flow that came from that long-term rental to slowly start replenishing it. But at the same time, they're still putting their $2,000 a month in there. And as time goes on, that $2,000 a month starts to accumulate. And now, just so you know, like, I've been doing this for we're 12 years now.
Yeah.
My oldest policy, when I put $1 in it, produces about $2.10 roughly. So you can imagine, if I'm going to go do a real estate deal, I have $2 instead of $1 every year that I make that contribution to it. Mm-hmm. Well, so people who start this usually start on a monthly basis. Now, there's other people, and I think of another guy's example where he wanted to buy a mobile home park. And he had just sold a couple other large commercial properties, sitting on a large amount of cash, and is like, okay, I get the fact that I don't want my money to stop compounding. So how could I do this? And so what we showed him is actually there's ways to lump sum large amounts of money into this on year one. And so this guy put almost 7 figures in year one, and immediately within 10 days took a loan and went and bought a mobile home park out in Oklahoma. And it took the cash flow from that to start replenishing his account. So we have people all on every different end of the spectrum. Some people are putting it in monthly just because that's the way they operate. Right. Some people have acquired lots of assets and they accumulate, and then they put it in either in the lump sum or annually or whatever it may be.
That's awesome. No, I love the different ways that people can get into it. And it's really, I think what you said, Joey, earlier, it's really just understanding who you are. That's really what it's about. And I think one of the fundamental keys to becoming financially independent is figuring out who you are. And, a lot of people don't even have that self-awareness, regardless of financial self-awareness in general. And so getting clarity on that is really obviously a key stepping stone in the right direction.
Which, by the way, to that point, I want to add one other thing. This infinite banking process, and let's just be honest, the financially independent route, like going for financial independence or financial freedom before you're 65, is not for somebody who is just cannot be outside of the pond, so to speak. Okay. What I mean by that is if you feel like you have to be just like everybody else, this isn't for you. Because the first time you start this policy and then you go talk about it and somebody says, life insurance, don't you know that's the dumbest thing you could do? Like nobody does that. That's stupid. And you feel like, oh no, I can't think for myself. I have to think like everybody else. Mm-hmm. That's not going to go well for you. Just like, again, you say, I'm going to be financially free in the next 10 years. Somebody says, oh, you can't do that. Nobody can do that. You're being fed lies, blah, blah, blah. Those are the kind of people that you have to cut out of your life.
The crabs in the barrel.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm just saying, if you want to ask who's it for, it's not for somebody that has to be just like everybody else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the really, successful people are those who are not trying to be like everyone else. They are trying to make a difference for themselves and understand themselves in that way. Gentlemen, I want to, transition into the final four. And since there are two of you, we got to ask each one of you separately. The first question that I ask every guest, and I have 4 questions. The first one's going to be for Joey. What's the worst job that you ever had?
Okay, so there's a toss up here. There's like several ways we could go with this. And I'm going to say it was a great job in the sense that I was able to give back and like be a part of something. I used to ring the bell at the kettles for the Salvation Army in high school. Okay. Like that, my parents actually worked for the Salvation Army. So I would go out there like nights, weekends, stuff like that after school. And I was out there ringing bells. I got paid. It was actually, basic minimum wage type stuff. But the worst part about it was you're literally out there in the elements all the time. And it doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's cold, freezing, whatever, because it's always around Christmas time. So I would say the worst job for me, standing on your feet out in the elements for that long period of time, it was brutal. But at the same time, I knew I was being helpful. So I don't know. I don't know if you can consider that the worst job. What do you think, Russ?
Is that the reason you got the beard now? Like, were you dressing up as Santa back in the day?
I did some stints as Santa. I'm not going to
lie. I would say like my second year in college, I took this job with a landscaping company, and it was the worst part about it was not the hard work, because be honest, I like hard work, and the hard work actually drove me to know that I never wanted to hold another shovel in my life, right? Which helps me today. The worst part about it is that I had to wake up at 7 a.m. and I would work from 7 to 12. Then I would go home and take a shower and grab lunch before my 1 o'clock class. But what happened is I'd go home, grab lunch, take a shower, take a nap, skip the 1 o'clock class, skip the 2 o'clock class, wake up for the for the 3 o'clock class. So that would probably be the worst job, because it really, it cost me some grade point average there for that 6 months.
I hear that. That's a good story though. But when you learn about what you're good at, what skills you want, but that is brutal. We've had some other people talk about landscaping as one of their worst jobs, but for different reasons. But anyways, the second question, I'm gonna start with you, Russ, which is, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like a broken record here, because we keep bringing up the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. Okay. And I mean, I wouldn't be on this call with you if it wasn't for that. And for me, it was a true paradigm shift, because I truly was the investment advisor. I held the securities license. I was doing the Wall Street method. And this book is anti-Wall Street. Like it is a retirement trap. Like he goes into detail. Like he picks no bones in this book. He goes after the lies that exist and is the antithesis of what I thought I wanted to be, right? I was like watching the Wall Street movies and like idolizing what that world would look like. I'm wheeling and dealing in the stock world, but this book was the paradigm shift. It was the thing that opened my eyes, but also the thing that it gave me freedom. And I wouldn't have the relationship, I think, with Joey that I have now, because it, drew us together even tighter and has brought our families together. So that's got to be my book. And I know I'm stealing his thunder, because that would have to be.
Yeah. I can't come up with a new answer. I mean, it's like the whole reason we're even talking to you. So I'm going to have to piggyback on his answer with that one.
All right. Well, we'll take that. Okay, so third question. So I'll start with you, Joey, on this one, since you didn't have an answer for the second question. But what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
You know what I would say, like in all the different businesses that we have ownership in and the different businesses we've started, the short-term rentals and land flipping and all these things, one of the things that I feel like is one of my weakest points is like being able to read the accounting and the reporting. I know knowing your numbers is so important. I know numbers on a lot of other scale, but from reading like accounting reports and things like that, like I feel like the need to learn that skill, and it's probably not super difficult. I just haven't ever really invested the time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I'd like to work on here in the next couple of years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great one. And for you, Russ, what's a skill or talent you'd like to learn?
I think Joey probably would say humility.
I don't know if that's a talent.
It's not a skill or a talent. It would require a skill for me to possess it. You know, I was trying to think of something good in there. Like I'm always wanting to improve my ability to speak well. And as you've been listening to me, you've probably like, yeah, I'm listening to you on 1.5 and it sounds like you're great. But at 1 point speed, I would like to be able to think of, like, my brain thinks and comes up with the answers slower than I wish I could. I wish I could have the answers hit my lips as fast as they hit my brain. And I have that gap there. So that's one of those things where I'm always watching other people who can think on their feet and talk. I think of a Ben Shapiro as a person that just immediately is asked a question and can just go on a 2-minute rant without ever taking a pause. And I'm thinking that's what I wish I could be able to have that skill or talent to do.
No, that's a good one. And with all fairness, I listen to everyone, including Ben Shapiro, at least 1.5. So that's, I have, but it's a good thing to have that kind of diligence anyways, to be able to think before you speak. I think it's a unique quality to be able to just rattle off, there's a unique quality to be able to do that, but that's definitely a good one to acquire, possess. So I'll accept that. Great answer. And fourth and final question for you guys is what does success mean to you? And we'll start with Russ.
Man, success for me would really be that when my kids are reading my eulogy, and they're telling those who knew me very little about who their dad was, that they had an intimate relationship with me, that they knew exactly what I stood for. They knew that I loved them, that I was willing to do anything it took to help them in whatever it was. And that they feel like that there was not a moment that we missed together because I was at work or I was aloof, thinking of something else. Success would be that, because what I see in the world is the more money we make, the more, quote unquote, the world would say successful we are, the more it takes us away from the people that we love and want to spend the most time with. Mm-hmm. And so for me, success would be the opposite, is that I would actually, my kids and those who I love and want to spend the most time with, I've always felt like I gave them 100% of me.
Awesome. I love that answer.
And I'll add to that as well. Success for me is, I would say, it's following what the Lord's will is for my life. And essentially that starts with, I'm not building my kingdom, I'm building his kingdom. And I see what we do every day as a part of that. It's definitely not a replacement for your own personal relationship with Christ, right? That to me is the uttermost, most important thing that you could do. In fact, our Nelson Nash has scripture all throughout the book that we've been mentioning. And when we go to different seminars with him, he would always lead off and say, hey, by the way, we're going to talk about a lot of different financial strategies and all that kind of stuff. But really, none of that matters if you don't have that relationship with Christ set. And so for me, it's how can I start the day seeking out what his will is for me today? And that will bleed over into being the husband that I need to be, to lead my family well, to be present, as Russ has already mentioned. And we left this part out of my story, but one of the reasons why my wife looked at me in the face and so clearly said, hey, you should absolutely do that, was because my business and in the mortgage business, I was 100% on call at all times. And I thought I was killing it at the home. Like I thought my wife was like, hey, my husband is the best thing that ever happened to me. And she would say, I thought we were literally not going to make it because you were constantly aloof and constantly not present. You were physically there, but mentally always away. And so I think success for me has been, how few hours can I put into the actual work I'm doing to create the biggest impact in people's lives and in my family's lives. And so to me, it's every year. Actually, Russ and I talk about this quite frequently. Okay, maybe I'm working 30 hours this week, and next week, how can I make it 29? How can I make it 28? Like, how can we consistently get smarter about what we're doing and increase our passive income so that we can start saying no to more hours at the office, and we can have a greater impact on our family?
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Further deeper explanation of what you'd already brought to light beforehand, and definitely resonates with me as well. And happy that we're able to bring this conversation to light. One thing that I did want to mention, I missed in our earlier part of the conversation, just before we close here. I think one of the things that I've kind of gained insight from you guys, from listening to your podcast and seeing what you guys are doing, is you don't just talk about these strategies and these different investment vehicles, but you guys are doing them, and each and every one of them, right? Like you said, you have short-term rentals, and you have a course, you have, showing people how you have gone into that. You're doing land investments, and you're showing people how you've done that. You're investing in this. And it's not just, teaching people about those things, but actually, I think what you guys have done is, find a new strategy and then say, okay, how can we go ahead and do that we've never done before, and then bring it back and show others how to do that. So I think I just wanted to throw it in there. I meant to bring it up earlier, but obviously the time flew by. We didn't.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, there's enough people that are talking about things. There's not a whole lot of people that put their money, so to speak, behind it. And I mean, every month, by the way, this is not a plug, but just to let you know, we do a passive income report, just so you can hear the good, the bad, and the very ugly. And what I mean by that is the 100unicorns.com drop shipping business that I bought is struggling. Okay. So it's not all rainbows and unicorns, but we're happy to share it because we want you to not just hear a great strategy and get, distracted. We want you to hear it and then say, man, this is actually working, or there's some challenges here that they're sharing with me I never would have known about. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
And I would say too, just to your point, like we want to talk about this in families, and we love to get families engaged. Like we would love the community to be really a group of many, many families. Mm-hmm. And I mean that from like a holistic, 3 or 4 generations, because I think our world has taught us that money is taboo. We're not supposed to talk about that sort of stuff. And those are the conversations. Unfortunately, then people go make mistakes in the family doing something, and they don't share it with another family member, and the other family member goes and makes the same mistake that they could have avoided had they been getting together and sharing these sort of topics and these sort of conversations. And I think that's what the community is for. But I hope that it's even going more macro down into the family, or micro down into the family units, where people are starting to have these conversations like we've had with our daughters on our podcast.
Yeah. And that's an excellent goal to have, because if you can affect one person, that's great. But if you can affect the whole family unit and help make that change from the ground up, that will definitely affect generations to come, for sure. And a much bigger impact. Absolutely. So where can our listeners find you guys or reach out to you? I know it sounds kind of superfluous to mention that because we've been talking all about Wealth Without Wall Street from the beginning, but where can people find you?
I'll just invite you into the community with us. That's the best way and the easiest way, because we try not to be on as much social media as possible, even though we have some presence there. So if you just go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/community. Oh, well, actually, we can give away a free tool too. It's called the scorecard. And if you go in there, it will tell you specifically where you're at in light of what it would take to get to financial freedom as a percentage. Like, okay, I'm 10% of the way, I'm 20% of the way, whatever it is. So go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/scorecard. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you also get a free access into the community. And in that community, it is an app, as Russ mentioned. So you download it on your phone and you can DM Russ and I directly in the app. let us know that you heard us on Weiss Advice. We'd love to know that that's where you came from and love to connect with you there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you guys again. It's been a pleasure. It's really been wonderful speaking with you guys again. And I just hope we can do this more often.
Yeah. Thank you again for having us, Jonah. It's a pleasure to spend time with you.
Awesome. And to all of our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Jonah Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.